Hello there, my name is Kelly Harlton. I'm one of Morris Kochanski's students and one of his assistant instructors. So here today what we're going to show you is we're going to use a Roycraft pack frame. Really versatile for a lot of things, but one of the things it's very good at is using to tow things. One of the issues when we're trying to tow things is you need to be able to tow from the upper part of your body, particularly your shoulders. So when you incorporate a Roycraft, it's got some low points to attach to, and we can use a nice commodity for us is mule tape. So we're actually going to use this mule tape. In this case, it's tripled. We're going to fix it to the frame thusly. I'm going to don the pack.
Yeah, the mule tape is a ribbon.
We have one,
that
we're one off here.
Says it's rated at
Oh, there we are.
2,500 pound tensile strength. So here we have a pack strap, a means to tie your snowshoe tie, means to make a winch. And so one material in your survival kit functions in many capacities. And generally the ideal length of the mule tape is about 7 arm spans, and you juggle the length that what you've seen Kelly do. He has folded it. In this case, because the piece was kind of short, we used 3, but basically it'd be long enough that when you have it and then have it again, you've got 4 strands. You tie your knots, you immediately in a flash have created the means to attach the pack frame so that you can use your shoulders for pulling. So Kelly is going to attach himself to a Coleman canoe. Now the plastic that Coleman canoes are built out of, to my way of thinking, is the best plastic I've ever seen. The dogs want to get hitched up. The plastic that Coleman canoes are built out of is the best plastic I've ever seen for use in building toboggans. And believe it or not, the canoe in this form is probably in some ways a superior toboggan, perhaps. So here you got a canoe that acts like a superior toboggan, which is something to be said with regard to loading it. Now, I usually use a canoe that's so broken up and so on that it's modified for maximum toboggan use. You'll notice how the angle can occur, that the keel, which most canoeists don't particularly care much for. I don't know why Coleman persists. I guess it's the rigidity, that the keel often takes over the direction you pull it. So you've got to continually be jerking it behind you sometimes to follow. If you've got a large number of people pulling the canoe, you usually have one person at the end orienting it to follow the people. Otherwise the canoe starts to wander away to the side like a kite does on the action of the wind. And you can appreciate that when you want to load stuff, you just fill the canoe and off you go. Whereas a toboggan, you've got to lash it on, and then the toboggan, being flat bottomed, will often tip on its side as you're moving along, whereas the canoe usually slides down and reorients yourself, particularly those canoes that don't have the keel. So and being pointed at each end, you're pulling it and you're not finding the blunt end like a toboggan hitting trees and stumps and stopping you, and you're having to disengage that way. So I find that for a class of 20 people, the heavy bulky stuff, the groceries, the tools, the axes, they all get loaded in the canoe simply by laying them in the canoe. And the bulky materials are actually lashed onto the pack frames that the people are using for pulling the canoe. And you'll find that the group pulling half a ton or a ton even hardly even feel it, because it's distributed to their shoulders. And when you got 20 people pulling, you've got to walk fast just to keep up to the people pulling this sort of arrangement. And I've never seen a means of conveyance. I've used this all my career. I've never seen a means of conveyance that was so convenient and took such heavy loads with the minimum amount of physical exertion to move stuff from to the survival base camps and so on. I also found that as my canoe was used, all of the thwarts and the gunnels and that all eventually fell off. I drilled bigger holes around the edges to put in loops, just in case sometimes you do have to cover the stuff and keep the wind from blowing it off, and so on and so on. The other thing you find that when you have an injured person, to evacuate an injured person in the wintertime, nothing better to lay that person out nicely in such a canoe and boot it down the road. Tremendous heavy weights that one individual can move, almost feather lightness when the whole group is involved. I've never found a winter conveyance that would outdo a Coleman canoe, except for the simple one annoyance of its keel wanting to have the canoe wander off. But there are times if you want to navigate in a blizzard, you probably use the canoe as your major navigational device, just by walking and not allowing the canoe to reorient. You always got to keep yourself at the front of the canoe according to the way the keel directs you, and so on. At any rate, it's kind of Polish logic, I guess you would say. You could never have dreamed that a Coleman canoe would be such an exceptionally good winter conveyance. Big, roomy, inexpensive, and probably your expedition, you get an extra day of course opportunity, because you spend so little time lashing down the loads, and then when you're on the trail, you're moving. The other thing you find with the Coleman canoe, you want to resist the notion of finding a steep hill and getting it in the canoe and then going down. That keel is apt to steer you into the forest. And I'll tell you, the jostling that you're apt to get as the canoe glances off the trees, off of the cut line. I had one incident where a serious accident occurred where these kids were using the canoe as a toboggan, and when they saw it taking off to the bush, one of the kids jumped out of the canoe at the rate it was going, and when he hit a tree, there was blood coming out of every orifice in his body. Every orifice. Ear, mouth, anus, whatever. And that was, Jason was his name. We remember him by the fact that he almost killed himself going downhill. Another student saw this long hill and thought, oh, I'm not going downhill, I'll ride the canoe. Well, the canoe goes out of control when it's quite loaded. And he didn't calculate the barbed wire fence that was at the bottom of the hill. And he was riding in the canoe and was partially full, and he was lucky that he was able to lay back, and he went under the wire, one of the wires, but the wire still practically tore his down jacket right off his body. He was lucky he didn't tear his nose and his chin. And then we've had the students who talk you into saying, oh, we got this long, long hill, let's let the canoe go and let it go by itself. No, you can't do that. You've got to reverse, and then everybody's got to keep the canoe under control. You let it go down, and that keel will eventually end up putting the canoe off into the forest. And as it goes through the humps, the canoe is flying in the air 10, 15 feet, and all the gear in the canoe, and your lanterns are trashed. And then if the snow is deep, you have to come back in the spring to find your axes and a lot of stuff that has been lost in the snow. And it's very spectacular, but you only do it once. And as an instructor, I allowed it to happen once, and I never allowed it to happen again, because it was an absolute disaster. Because that canoe, with all the groceries, all the stuff loaded in it, the weight and the steepness and the length of the hill, when it started to go the last half or third of the outrun, it was leaping and bucking in the air. And as long as it stayed on the cut line, it was not too bad. But when it hit into the trees, it was violently being thrown in every direction. And when you see that, it's very educational. You realize you better not ride that canoe and freewheel it that way when there's trees on both sides, because it'll kill you. And Jason fortunately didn't get killed, but Jason caused 3 elk to be shot. And one of the vans from from his treatment center to be totally wrecked when they collided with all that. And it was because of him being evacuated because of his injury. And all these other things happened. So if Jason hadn't gone down the cut line with my canoe, there would be 3 elk that wouldn't have been shot and 1 van that wouldn't have been totaled. And there was 1 student that wouldn't have blood coming out of every orifice in his body when he hit a tree full running speed. The canoe is going down quite a clip, and you jump out. You got to move. If you're upright and there's a tree in the way, you sure hit it hard, like he did. I never saw anybody that looked so ghostly white and so unconscious as he was.